Thanks to reckless greed and corruption, our planet is in a state of emergency. Not only are we in the midst of Earth's sixth mass extinction, but global temperatures are soaring like never before in human history. Our government is supposed to be by the people and for the people, yet it is systematically turning its back on us in front of our very eyes. Fighting this level of injustice takes more than a couple environmentalists. It takes everyone. It takes a climate army. We'll only be effective if everyone is armed with the proper knowledge. So here's where you get your green ammunition. My name's Adam Roberti. I've been diving ever since I was 12, and I studied environmental science at the University of Miami. As climate change and sea level rise are threatening to put Miami underwater, I've been working to raise the sense of urgency among Miamians. One thing I've learned is that talking about polar bears and future generations doesn't work. What I found does get people's attention is money. There are lots of ways climate change is costing us money, from struggling agriculture to storm damages. But the cost of what's happening underwater isn't always as obvious. As our oceans are steadily heating up, one of the world's most precious ecosystems is having a hard time surviving. Coral reefs are home to almost a quarter of all marine species. But not only that, according to the World Economic Forum, coral reefs represent an incredible $36 billion a year in economic value to the world. Unfortunately, as global temperatures rise, coral bleaching puts all of this at risk.
So coral bleaching events occur with increased water temperatures. So when those temperatures rise outside of their regular limits, they become stressed. And a stressed coral responds by bleaching. So unless ocean temperatures are stabilized, we're going to continue to see bleaching events which lead to large coral die-offs.
In the last 40 years, while the world's use of fossil fuels has skyrocketed, mass coral reef bleaching events have become 5 times as common. As a South Florida native, I was well aware of the impact that climate change was having on our oceans. What I didn't know about was climate change's impact on lakes all over the world. For part of my master's degree, I had the chance to study in Lugano, Switzerland, a city that stands on the northern shore of Lake Lugano. I had no clue how a warmer climate could possibly be bad for a lake, let alone the economy of a place like Lugano. But that's when I met Professor Patrick Della Croce at Franklin University. He taught our class that during the summer months, the sun heats up the surface of the lake, but the bottom stays dark and cold. This leads to what's called thermal stratification, where you basically have a warm lake floating on top of a cold lake. In the winter, once the surface water cools down, the top and bottom lakes are able to mix. Here's the thing, that mixing only happens when the top lake cools down enough. But if it isn't a very cold winter, the mixing doesn't happen and the annual cycle is skipped.
When the lake, for instance, skips a cycle, then when it mixes the year afterwards, you have a hell of a lot of nutrients coming up, which will lead to very large algae bloom during the next summer, which makes the water very murky, which doesn't make the water very inviting for swimming. And so from a touristic perspective, the lake is hugely important.
As winters continue to get warmer, cities like Lugano, which rely on a beautiful lake to attract tourists, will be forced to deal with the reality of massive algal blooms. Okay, quick recap. Rising global temperatures are causing coral reefs to bleach, which is not only devastating for the health of our oceans, but also for multi-billion-dollar industries like fishing and tourism. In terms of our lakes, warmer winters mean that large algal blooms are set to disrupt the local economies dependent on bringing in tourists. Now, take this ammunition, get out, and share it. Use it as a topic of conversation or as evidence for an argument, but just sitting around and hoping for the best is not going to save our planet. So welcome to the Climate Army.